Let's talk the keys to the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Tennessee Titans to get to the AFC Championship game.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. Together, we are the host of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Have you covered 5 days a week, sometimes with bonus coverage like this week when the Bengals play on Saturday, right here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button so we come to your ears and eyes every day. James, we're going to dive into some keys to victory today for the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a game that it seems like many outside of Cincinnati see the Titans as a clear favorite. And you can kind of see why. They're the number one seed in the AFC. They won a lot of games while they were really injured this year. They beat the Chiefs, holding them to 3 points. That was back in week 7, but they did it. They have some quality wins on their resume this year, and with Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, and Julio Jones set to take the field together for a rare occurrence. Not the first time, but it's certainly been rare. We talked to Tyler about it yesterday in the crossover. You can kind of see why. Titans 3.5-point home favorites, and that's where it starts for me. James, is the Bengals have to go on the road, and Mike Vrabel's defense is quite good at disguising what they're doing, rotating coverage, doing weird things post snap to confuse quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And one thing Joe Burrow has been really good at this year is using the hard count to get a read on that defense before the snap, sometimes changing plays, other times just to inform what he's going to do with the ball. And he's been great pre-snap. He's been great post-snap when defenses do rotate coverages, but that challenge is accentuated a little bit on the road in what I assume will be very hostile environment. I know a lot of Bengals fans are traveling to Nashville, and I think that's great. I'm looking forward to seeing how much orange and black I can spot in the stands on Saturday, but the hard count probably won't be a tool. So finding other ways to help Joe Burrow pre-snap is kind of where this starts for me, because the key to the game overall, like the high level, big picture key, comes down to Joe Burrow. And so when you start to break that down, the first thing that comes to mind is, he's in a road environment. They've overcome it this year, but it's a little bit of a test again this week, I think, with the way Vrabel's defense works.
Motion. When I was killing it in elementary school basketball, our go-to play, our base play, right, was motion, and everything we ran was motion, and there was some derivative of that, and we would start there, and that would be our base offense. I expect to see more motion, right? That will help Burrow a bit, and that pre-snap aspect of it. So maybe they do go that route, but I agree with you. Like, the path to the Titans winning is completely wrecking Joe Burrow's cool, calm, swaggered out. I'm playing like the MVP, and we're just getting started in Cincinnati, and this is the new standard. And I could keep using the quotes that he said over the past week. I'm gonna rock Cartier sunglasses and walk in with a Space Jam jacket on to Paul Brown Stadium. Those are the type of things that they need to find a way to disrupt, because if they don't, could they still win? Maybe, but their chances go, way, way down. So yeah, Mike Vrabel. Here's the thing, though, is everyone's talking about like the 8-0 coming off of 8 days rest and the bye and all of that. That sounds good. Mike Vrabel knew coming off of a bye who they were playing. In 2 of those years, it was the Jaguars. So okay, it's Jacksonville. And then the 10 days rest, you still know. This time they didn't know until probably Sunday. And yeah, they had their film guys break down all the potential matchups and stuff, and they could start doing work. But I don't think there's that huge of an advantage. There's the rest advantage. But from a schematic standpoint, I don't think there is. But yeah, I do think that that's where they start. And that is the scary part of this game. Mike Vrabel, his defense on the road, especially if the Titans get a score early, And that would probably be my, other key here in this first segment. Game script. Can the Bengals get a lead early and kind of, I don't even know if it's going to feel like they were in control at the level they were in control last week. Because, man, it felt like they controlled the whole game. And I know it was, only a one-score game, 7-point game at the end of it. But it just, you never really felt like they were going to lose. I don't know if this week's going to be like that. But if the Bengals could get to, off to an early lead, I think it would really help their cause.
Yeah, and there's some similarities in these teams. We started to hint at game script early in the week. We talked about it a little bit yesterday too, and you're absolutely right. I think that it matters in this game. We asked Tyler the question, like, what's it take for Tennessee to get off their game plan, to get off of Derrick Henry so much and the play action stuff? Because we kind of saw it last year when the Bengals played the Titans. Very different Titans team, of course, at the time. The defense not nearly what it is this year, and it's a solid defense for sure. I would say in the top third of the league. It's good enough to certainly win in the playoffs, I would say. But is it good enough to beat Joe Burrow? That's a question that this comes down to, right? And so, yeah, I think game script is big in this one, and it's because if you can get Tennessee to get into a drop back mode, and it sounds like it would take a lot to get them into a drop back mode, they're not going to panic and move off their offensive plan like I would say the Raiders did to some extent. Got away from Jacobs uh, maybe a little bit too soon, given that there was some room for success in their running game. But I think bigger this week, right? Absolutely bigger this week because if guys like Jeffrey Simmons get to tee off against a pass, and he's not at least a little bit on his heels, like okay, they might run it here. They're not drop back passing. That's important because the Tennessee defensive line, individually, the best player, they have one guy, I think, who's a good pass rusher individually. A lot like the Bengals, where, for the Bengals, I would say Trey Hendrickson is their one guy. They get some contributions from the rest. BJ Hill does, he and Larry Ogunjobi racked up some sacks this year. Sam Hubbard gets after it as best he can, but those guys aren't necessarily creating as much for themselves. Where for the Titans, the guy that really creates the most for himself is Jeffrey Simmons. They get occasional wins from Harold Landry. I know he has 14 sacks. A lot of those, as we discussed with Mike, were schemed up or, were cleanup variety. They do a lot of twisting and stunts on that defensive front. The Bengals offensive line obviously needs to be ready for that. Joe Burrow needs to be ready for that. But all that stuff gets a lot easier if it's a tight game and if the Bengals don't get out to a big start. And we saw them get off to a big start against the Raiders last week. They weren't the second half team we've grown accustomed to seeing on the other hand, but they did get off to that hot start. And I think it really helped shape the rest of the game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it did too. And, hopefully that's because I get it. Zach will defer. But if the Titans win the coin toss, I would not mind it at all because it's a chance for the Bengals to go down and have this first 15 where we have seen at the beginning of the year that it was just awful, but they've gotten better at it. And with the way Burrow's playing, you feel like they're going to get off to a pretty good start right away. And doing that, given how the Titans want to play, right, which is a physical, tough, almost AFC North-esque. We're going to hand the ball to 22. We're going to, give it to our big guys, some on the perimeter, but mostly it's going to be run, play action, run, defense, physical. Given they want to play that way, it might be more valuable to get up 7-0, right? Instead of having that, back-to-back possessions at the end of the first half and the first possession of the second half. So, and again, it depends on how the game goes, but wouldn't mind it at all, because if you could knock the crowd out of it a little bit, not saying you're going to completely knock them out. I get it. It's one drive. Okay. The Raiders had the lead once upon a time to start the game last week. So, it's possible to rally from that. I totally understand. At the same time, when we've seen this team struggle when Burrow's playing at this level, it was the 49ers, right? They get behind. and he tries to save the day, and they just have all these self-inflicted mistakes. The Chargers game, self-inflicted mistakes. So if they can take care of it and get off to a good start, I'm going to be looking up at halftime saying, all right, well, they have a good shot here. And that's really all you can ask against the number 1 seed, even if it doesn't feel like it, the number 1 seed on the road with the chance to go to the AFC title game. And by the way, the Bengals haven't won a road playoff game in team history. So if at halftime we're saying they're 2 quarters away from doing so, that's a huge win.
I like knocking off first, and there's a lot more to talk about in this game. The Tennessee offense being
Mhm.
healthy, there are a lot of keys on the defensive side of the ball. There's still more to talk about for this Bengals offense as well. We'll continue our look ahead and looking at the keys to victory coming up next.
But first, I have to tell you about Get Upside, the app that's going to save you money right now. You can download it in the App Store if you have an iPhone, or Google Play if you have an Android, and it's free. A free app that saves you money? Yeah, that's what Get Upside does, because it's going to save you up to 25 cents per gallon of gas every time you fill up. And right now with promo code Touchdown, you're going to get a bonus 25 cents off per gallon on your first fill up. So why not download it? It is free money that's sitting there on your smartphone. All you have to do is download the Get Upside app in Google Play or the App Store, and make sure you use promo code Touchdown, and you're going to get up to 50 cents off per gallon on your first fill up. You can take that money and put it in your bank account, PayPal account, use it for an Amazon gift card. Heck, you can buy Jake and I something nice. Either way, make sure you download it right now, the Get Upside app, and use promo code Touchdown.
BetOnline also still has you covered for all of your betting needs as we're well into 2022. We're into the playoffs at this point. The Bengals trying to make a Super Bowl run. A lot of awards still haven't been announced in the NFL, and they've got you covered for the entirety of the NFL playoffs, the NBA season. Assuming we get a baseball season, they'll have you covered for that as well. They've got a new website that we've been telling you about, simple to use, better than it's ever been. And not only that, they have a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit right now. Just use promo code locked on when you sign up. Again, they're going to give you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That, as James loves to say, is free money. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, don't wait to take advantage of all the great offers, props, and lines available at betonline.ag. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest place to wager on all your favorite sports. Go check it out. BetOnline, where the game starts. James, let's go defense next. I think that obviously this starts with Derrick Henry, but when I was reviewing some Titans offense this year from this year and some of their more successful games against some of the better teams they've beaten, they're very annoying offense to defend, I think. It's a lot of this duo where it looks like it might be wide zone to one of the edge defenders. And so, Derrick Henry's bouncing a lot outside on these inside duo runs, breaking off runs that way. It's a lot of play action digs, play action stuff over the middle where it isolates a receiver on a corner, gets him behind the linebackers who get sucked up because they want to go defend Derrick Henry in the running game, or Deonta Foreman, whoever's playing running back for Tennessee. And then they're doing a lot of screen game. And when it's not that, it's just, well, we're in rhythm. The defense is on its heels. They're expecting us to run. We have Julio Jones and AJ Brown on the outside. We're just going to throw it up. And we're going to have these isolated verticals on the outside where teams try to stack the box. And we're going to take our deep shot. So it all starts with Derrick Henry.
Mhm.
And the obvious goal is to make the Titans one dimensional, but how realistic is that goal? I don't know. So maybe it instead becomes, can we bend not break? Can we get off the field in key situations? And so for me, it's I'm looking a lot at third down defense in this
Mhm.
game and
Yeah,
red zone defense in this game. Because
sure.
I don't think they're stopping Derrick Henry or stopping the screen game. Although I think they're pretty good defending screens. And the Titans have good receivers. So where it's not a stop, and I think there are opportunities for stops. We'll talk about Ryan Tannehill's ball security, but it's can you get off the field in those key moments? Can you make the big plays when you need the big plays that can really impact the game? I think there will probably be some of those in this game, and I think that the way they go will go a long way in telling you who wins. It's not going to necessarily be the every play stuff, but I think there will be big opportunities for this defense.
Sure. No, they're not going to stop Derrick Henry. And you shouldn't expect that. And I don't think they do expect it. You're right. It's going to be the situational part of it. And think about it. If Derrick Henry has 25 carries for a buck 10, maybe a touchdown, right? Do we have any idea if the Bengals won or lost? We have no idea. And so that's the point. Like, they could win and he has that line. They could lose and he has that line. And so it's everything else. In the everything else, one does mean no 70-yard touchdown run for Derrick Henry, because those do hurt. You don't want him getting huge chunk runs. But two, all of the other stuff, which the Bengals have been really good at, limiting the big downfield plays, the jump balls that you mentioned, the deep crosses, the Julio Jones, or the go ball to AJ Brown or post, if they send them on, make sure that those don't happen, those huge explosives. And really, the Bengals have been good against the run this year. They've been good at limiting those big plays for the most part. Obviously, there's games where they have and moments where they have. And if they do those things, then they're going to get to the part where you just mentioned, 3rd and 7. Well, Trey Hendrickson was a full go, is fully cleared, is ready to go. So guess what I like on 3rd and 7? Number 91, I'm in heaven, right? 3rd and 7. And that's where I'm at. Like, that's the thing, is if you have Trey Hendrickson, you have a team in a defense that, yes, without Larry Ogunjobi, they're not going to have as much of a pass rush, but they're still capable on the interior. DJ Reader should set you up well for Derrick Henry, and all the talk about, oh my God, they're banged up on the defensive line. Well, you're going to have Josh Tupou back, and it really doesn't feel like the Kerr kid, the Zach Kerr kid, is going to get some snaps as well this week. It feels like you're good enough there. So the depth is there. They have 20 of 22 starters, right? They're 10 of 11 on defense. I think they're set up philosophically, and it's a bunch of veterans, by the way, who, if they do get beat for a big play, it's not like they're going to let it snowball, where it matches up really well stylistically from they like to run the ball, we're good at stopping the run. Oh, they want to try AJ Brown deep, we're good at that. And so that part of it is exciting, because you're talking about a battle-tested group. This isn't like the offense where it's a bunch of young dudes. These dudes have been in playoff games. Hendrickson, Bell, Hilton, all these guys, even Eli Apple, playoff games. So really, outside of Reader, outside of the linebackers, Pratt and Wilson, and it's a big game for them. Most of these guys are battle-tested and have been in the postseason before this season.
Yeah, it's a really big game for those linebackers that you mentioned there, because, we talked about this, I think, a little bit yesterday, tackling in this game. It's always important, but with guys like Derrick Henry and AJ Brown, who both of them are really good with the ball in their hands, at making guys miss, at running through tackles, at busting off big plays. The screen game that I mentioned from the Titans, tackling this week is going to be absolutely huge, especially when it's Derrick Henry. And you mentioned, James, a stat line for Derrick Henry. We talked about this earlier this week too. Last year against the Bengals, he had 18 carries for 112 yards. That's better than your 25 for 110. And he had a
110. Yep.
touchdown. And averaged 6.2 yards per carry, but the Bengals won that game by a lot. And the Bengals also ran it well in that game. Giovanni Bernard had a nice game. Samaje Perine had a nice game. But the other thing that I think, there are some matchups that aren't so good for the Bengals. I'm a little bit worried about the two receivers for Tennessee. I think the Bengals can handle it, but Julio Jones, still a good player, right? And
Sure.
the resources that will have to be dedicated to the run might put them in some precarious situations, but Ryan Tannehill will put the ball in danger. And that's the other big one, right? When he gives you that chance for a pick,
Have to
do you
take it.
catch the ball?
Yep.
Or does it bounce off your hands and you're jumping
Yep.
in the air, frustrated that you just dropped a gift? Because if his track record is any indicator, there will be a chance to take the
Yep.
ball away from Ryan Tannehill. And
Yep.
that could be huge, because Joe Burrow's been taking care of the ball. And so there's this X factor of turnovers that in the playoffs, turnovers, penalties, missed tackles, explosive plays, all this stuff gets magnified. And if you can get that big play, it goes right in there with those third down stops and those red zone stops and could be a big inflection point in the game. Let's talk
Yeah.
X factors, James. Let's go to X factors to wrap up the show coming up next.
First, I got to talk about Built Bars, and Built Bars are my X factor, my go-to, my MVP, whatever the hell you want to say during the recovery process post workout. But the thing about Built Bars is, yeah, you might not be that workout warrior, and that's okay. Maybe you're just looking for a healthy midday snack in between Zoom meetings if you're working from home, or in between trips to different businesses if you're in sales, or whatever the case may be. Built Bars are perfect for you because they taste amazing. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. They have high protein. They're low in sugar. They're low in carbs. They're going to fit the macros that you're looking for, low in calories as well. So check them out right now at built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your order. It is that simple. Promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off the best protein bars on the planet at built.com.
So, X factors,
So,
the swings, the big bits that might swing this game one way or the other. Turnover battle. We talked about it. Obviously huge. Tackling.
Yep.
Obviously huge. When I say X factors, thinking about this game, James, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I was thinking of players, but yeah,
No,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's fine. It can be a player. What's a matchup?
the tackling part is interesting to me. I'll give you one on offense, one on defense, and one's paid much, much more than the other. I wonder, because you mentioned two big physical guys, and it does seem like, Eli Apple's better and all that stuff. If Eli Apple is on Julio Jones, that just makes me cringe just because of saying it out loud. And I get it. Julio Jones is not the Julio Jones that I remember from, the Super Bowl and him making crazy catches. I get all that. Eli Apple, Julio Jones, and he faced him, when he was with the Saints. Apple did with Jones, but point remains the same. And so I wonder if Trey Waynes is going to get a little more run in this game. He's a little bigger, certainly more physical. In tackling wise, you would say he's a better tackler, and so he could be an X factor. My only concern is my man dug himself not just in the doghouse, he dug himself underneath the doghouse, burrowed underneath it, and he is planted, cemented underneath the doghouse, and they're only going to dig him out if something happens health wise to one of these guys, which obviously, knock on wood, that never happens. So he's a potential X factor. And it would be maybe the highest paid X factor in league history. But I do think he could come up and make a play or two on Derrick Henry potentially, or maybe a tackle on Julio Jones if you need him to. So it is worth noting that I think that number 26, I'm probably the last person outside of his family that thinks that he might make a play on Saturday. But Trey Waynes might come up big.
It'll be interesting to see if he plays at all. He
I
did
know.
not get on the field in the wild card round
No.
at all. He played the
Doghouse.
entire game in week 18
Underneath it. Underneath the
when the
doghouse.
Bengals had all of their starters resting.
They built
So,
a 2-story mansion on top of the doghouse, and he's
yep,
underneath that. Go ahead.
it, it is a good idea, though. I don't dislike the idea historically. And, our friend Luke from Locked On Vikings will tell you this. He watched Trey Waynes for 5 years in Minnesota. Trey
Yep.
Waynes, according to Luke, is the best run defending corner in the NFL. At least he was. I don't know. Maybe a couple of years later, he's now 29, not 27 like he was in his last year with the Vikings. But he was a really good run defender with
Mhm.
with the Vikings. Had a lot of years where he was an incredibly efficient tackler, wasn't missing much in the way of tackles, and it's just hard to see him get on the field, right? If he isn't going to play at all against the Raiders, not even a handful of snaps, probably, as you said, way in that doghouse or otherwise just buried on the depth chart. So, I think that's a nice idea. I really
It
do
doesn't
think
it
it's a nice
fit?
idea. Yeah.
It
Because
let me
because you're
ask let
right.
me ask
Because Julio versus Eli Apple, like those guys know each
that,
other.
that's
And
what I was
and
about to ask you.
you
Yeah.
you credit Eli Apple for being better for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, his last two games, so week 17 in the wild card round, he was targeted 15 times. gave up 11 catches for 170 yards. And did he give up a touchdown? Yeah, he gave up 2 touchdowns in both weeks. Got some pass breakups as well, but he also had a penalty in the wild card round. The last 2 weeks of Eli Apple haven't been so good. I don't think it's enough for the Bengals to make a change. And
Mm-mm.
maybe we shouldn't be spending so much time on it as a result, but his last 2 weeks have been tough.
Yep. Yeah. Just moving on, other X factors. One more thing, because we got not even bogged down with Burrow. We talked about the necessary amount of Burrow at the top. I do think the Bengals will still try to stay balanced, at least to a degree, early,
Yeah.
and the hope, not the expectation. The hope is that you look up and it's the middle of the second quarter and Mixon has, I don't know, 8 carries for 37 yards or something, where it's like, oh, he's averaging over 4 yards a carry. It's serviceable enough.
Yeah.
Because the run game has just been such a slow moving thing. And I've seen this too much. Young quarterbacks at some point, and not that I've seen one that is as good pre-snap as Joe Burrow. I really don't know if I have. I mean, I can't think back to one that is. So maybe it doesn't matter, and he's just the outlier. But at some point, they're going to be confused. Maybe it's not this week, maybe it's next week, maybe it's in the Super Bowl. At some point, though, they're going to need the run game, and it would be nice not to lean on it this week. And it's weird saying Joe Mixon like being an X factor, but if he can just be. And it's not necessarily on him. If the run game in general can produce 4 yards a carry, I think it would do wonders. And that's seems like not a lot to ask, but it has been when you compare it to recent weeks.
It feels like there's an opportunity to get Mixon involved in the passing game as well. We haven't seen a lot of screen game, and Mixon has had some big games as a receiver this year.
Yep.
But if there's a place where you like your matchups and coverage, David Long for the Titans has been pretty good,
Yeah.
but their linebackers aren't. There's no Fred Warners. There's no, Devin White in the Super Bowl is making plays. There's no Levante Davis, Bobby Wagner's out there. They're solid, fine players.
Sure.
But maybe there's an opportunity there to get Mixon going in the run game. And
I
what we haven't. Go
real
ahead.
quick, just before we get off of Mix, I asked him that at the end because of his news conferences, it was a lot of, when my number's called, we have a lot of weapons, and he was doing the good soldier thing, and he was like, I know I'm gonna have to make a big play at some point, and I'm like, have you envisioned that big play is in the passing game? And he dodged it. But maybe that's it, which is fine. Maybe it is just an extension of the run game. Like, that is fine if it happens. So hopefully it does on Saturday.
Yeah. And the thing we haven't talked about that maybe is negligent of us, James, is gotta do an okay job in protection. It doesn't need to be perfect. We've seen that Joe Burrow can work when things aren't perfect. But
I think we did it at the top, didn't we?
I mean, we talked about game scripts. We talked about Joe Burrow. We talked about Joe Burrow pre-snap to post-snap. We didn't really talk about Jeffrey
Well,
Simmons in a vacuum. We
yeah.
talked about it a little bit, but like Hakeem
Well, sure.
Adeniji, when Jeffrey Simmons plays on both sides of the line of scrimmage, he's not like, Cam Hayward, who always lines up on the same side. He's going to get
Sure.
Quentin Spain. So the Bengals dodge Cam Hayward in their bad matchup on the interior when it's the Steelers. But Jeffrey Simmons is going to line up all over the place, and that right side needs to be ready for it. Right side communication needs to be good, and the Titans will bring stunts. They will bring a lot of simulated pressure. So you think back to early in the season when the Bengals had all those free rushers up through the AB gap. Can't have too much of that this week. Joe Burrow's been great at evading pressure, making plays. That needs to continue. But, again, how bad or good will that
Yeah.
protection be? I think is a huge variable in this game because, while maybe the Bengals defensive line has been more productive, and Joe Goodberry's pointed this out on a pressure basis, the Titans have a pretty similar unit over there where they together with their coverage in the back end get some coverage sacks, get some team sacks, get some stunts for sacks and the simulated stuff. So some real similarities there, I think, on both sides of the ball and how well Joe Burrow's able to handle it and how well the offensive line is able to handle it, I think is big. But hard not to be confident in Burrow right now. Like we talk
Yeah.
about X factors, and isn't it just Joe Burrow? Isn't he just the guy? And that's where it always comes down to for me. The Bengals have the better quarterback in this game, and maybe it's just that.
Yeah. Couple things. No doubt. You have to keep him clean. One thing we were talking about with Tyler during the crossover, and it was he said how they would float four to one side if needed to stop Jamar Chase. Let's say if Jamar's going off and just put more guys on that side of the field. Good luck. Like, do that. You should start by doing that, because then T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are going to be eating a whole damn semi truck full of Built Bars. Then they're going to go to BetOnline and throw a bunch of money on the Bengals to win because they're going to just light up the scoreboard. So it's that's the part of it. You're right. The X factor part of Joe Burrow. Like, if they keep him clean, it's just like last week. If he is clean, I am fully confident that he's going to put up big numbers and have his team in position to win. He's going to take care of the ball. The way this game goes haywire, you're on the road, you give up pressure early, you get off to a slow start, you give up pressure early, Burrow's getting hit a ton, and you have some turnovers throughout the game because he's getting hit, you're falling behind, and then you have to pass. All of those things, are factors. So that's the part of it. So the good start, game script, protect Burrow, to me, that's all like one thing. And if you protect Burrow, then you're probably going to get off to a good start. And then it's the key to the game script. And now all of a sudden the snowball continues to roll and get bigger. So it's the ripple effect. And it's not saying that they can't come back if they get down or anything like that, but they're all tied together. And it goes back to the original point that you just made. Protect Joe Burrow. It doesn't mean he's not going to get hit. Of course he's going to get hit. But if you're just competent in the trenches, C plus. All right, I'm talking about just get an 80 on the exam on Saturday afternoon, Bengals fans, and Saturday evening. If you do that, offensive line, then I think Joe Burrow is going to be good. I think this offense is going to score a lot of points.
Let's hit your prediction then, because it sounds like you're I think often a fan of the over. But what do you got this week for your prediction, James? Because a lot we've talked about going into this game on the road and uncharted waters for to some degree for the Bengals, and a very big game for this franchise.
I'll tell you one thing. There ain't no damn way some dude named Jackrabbit is stopping Jamar Chase. So let's start there. That's not happening. Tyler Boyd, this is a big Tyler Boyd game. He was good against Tennessee last year, great against Tennessee last year. I think that's going to happen again. I think T. Higgins is going to have a much better game this week than he had last week. Jamar, it's not going to just be Jackrabbit. They're going to do a lot to him. I think that they're going to try to take things away. And if not, and they just say, oh, be patient and dink and dunk your way down the field, well, guess what? Joe Burrow is going to do that. He showed he's capable of doing that. You said, I always take the over and I lean over. I do. I think it's the key going back to the preseason. And what was it, Jake? How many points?
It starts with a 3, I think.
Yes, 3. If the Bengals get to 3, as in 30,
no, yeah, there you go.
Then it's going to be just fine. So, and I think it is going to be just fine. This is going to be a crazy, on the edge of your seat. I'm going to have to write 5 different versions of a game story, but I think it's going to come down to the Bengals beat the Titans 31-27. Joe Burrow leads them to victory, plays great again, and this offense does just enough. And the defense, for the second straight week, Jake, comes up with the stop that they need. Ryan Tannehill's driving down the field. Nissan Stadium is going crazy, but also quiet enough so he can operate. And he's audible and he's looking, and one of 2 things are going to happen. Either a Jesse Bates interception or Jesse Bates blindside blitz off the edge, sack, fumble, gamer. Jesse Bates comes up big. Bengals go to the AFC title game. I'm getting chills just saying it. You can see me tingling and twitching here on YouTube. but 31-27 is the final. Yes, I picked the over. I'm a sucker. I like points, but I also think that that's what's going to happen in this game. We have the potential for a mini shootout of sorts, a playoff shootout, certainly. And the Bengals find a way to sneak out of Nashville with their first ever road playoff win in franchise history.
That'd be a lot of fun. That'd be a lot of fun. I tell you what, I
Uh,
would love to see it. This game for me is feeling like a coin flip right now. I could see it
I
going either
know.
way, but again, hard to doubt Joe Burrow. And we haven't mentioned this name all week somehow, maybe once. Randy Bullock. Remember him?
Oh,
We haven't said his name.
no, we
What kind
haven't.
of factor is Randy Bullock going to be in this game? Will he cramp his calves? Or
Dude,
will he just like make Bengals fans even more upset by making clutch kicks? That is
that,
the question.
that's I'm glad you put that second part out there. I'm not going to make fun of Randy Bullock this week. Hell no.
No, don't put that into the
Hell
world.
no. Hey, man, you're in great shape. I'm not making fun of that dude. That's ridiculous. Why would I do that this week? That is, can't do it.
X Factor, Randy
That,
Bullock.
oh, God. You're talking about a heartbreaker. That would be
Uh,
ridiculous.
you know what I don't like about your scenario, James, is that if the Titans are driving with a chance to win the game, that's a lot more stressful than the Raiders driving last week with a chance to most likely send the game to overtime. I don't think there's any way they're going for two there. But you know what?
And
We'll take
Bisaccia
wins.
said, yeah, Bisaccia said he wouldn't have went for two. I probably would have. He's out of his damn mind, by the way. You had
Yeah,
the worst
he's
team.
he's an old school guy. That's very him. Let's wrap up there, James. We'll be back on Saturday night, hopefully bringing you the Bengals' first road playoff win, as James said. Hopefully bringing you positive vibes as the Bengals are marching their way as deep as they can on this playoff run. We're hoping for SoFi. Let's see if they can get there with another win this week in Tennessee. Until then, Bengals fans, hoo day and have a good one.